Thanks for joining our panel. We have very interesting speakers from different companies today to discuss the future of digitized humanity, the way we see it, the way we explore, and what will be the future basically. We know that everybody have, so far there was a lot of discussions about technology revolution, so Industry 4.0, we had in beginning of 19th century.
There was this industrial revolution. So there was a lot of discussion in those days about how things will be changed, how
quickly it will happen. Now we see a lot of changes that technology bringing in many sectors. So I think it will be interesting discussion, and we would keep the discussion open. So asking a question, then each panelist can address his view on the specific question, and then we will open to the public or to our audience to ask questions as well. So coming to the topic of the discussion, I would like to address a question and ask, starting from Artyom, how we see the most impactful technology, how you see what will be the kind of main technology that you see will bring change in the different sectors of economy, how you see that?
Thank you for the question, for moderating the panel. In my opinion, just looking at the trends and the progression of the development, I would say artificial intelligence, the keys that can change our reality. Like, you know, like 10 years ago, it was still conviction that a human operates the vehicle much better than machine can. But today, there is no doubt that in 5-6 years, there will be fully autonomous, driverless vehicles. So, for example, seeing these transformations and how it can affect the way we live, the way we communicate, I believe, yes, and this is just one of the industries. We can take the medicine, we can take the research, we can take even like, you know, writing articles. Today, artificial intelligence is writing articles on economics, on sport, and you know, the quality wise, it's getting closer and closer to the contemplations that normally it was believed human can only provide. So I would say that that drastically changed the way we live, and I believe that's one of the major technologies, in my opinion.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think in addition to artificial intelligence and machine learning, also something very important is happening, also related a little bit to what Sergey showed earlier today, something that happened in 2013, right, with the exposure of mobile technology in the world. Basically, the interaction of the companies and the customer became way more intimate, way more direct, and that changed completely the perception and the practices into how services and products should be built. Now, customer became in the focus, right? It's all customer-centric today. Mm-hmm. And all the technologies such as machine learning and artificial intelligence are just contributing to that and making that even more innovative and bringing that even further, right? The interaction between the customer and the organization now happens via chatbots, right? And behind the chatbot, there's no actual person. It's the machine learning and artificial intelligence that tries to find the right answer for you, and still creates a same personal experience and the same personal feeling that actually you're not talking to a machine. I think this is also very important part of innovation, and the more we go forward, the more we're going to see really personalized and customer-centric approach to how services and products are offered today.
Veranika, what are your thoughts here?
Well, absolutely, thanks. I would agree with Artyom and Ben. And I am very excited to see this artificial intelligence and machine learning and the practical application of it. So I'm sure that this will impact our future dramatically. We will see artificial intelligence and the tools everywhere. So the Amazon Go was one of the examples. There will be shops like this. But what also I think will have a big impact on the future is IoT, is Internet of Things, and it can be in the industries. So basically more and more devices will be interconnected. Basically any device can hold the information, and devices will hold the information, and they will have this insights that they can solve the problem with. So for example, like we talked about in industrial revolution, so now in industries you have the machinery that produces goods, products, cars. So these machines now, we see in IoT already predictive maintenance. So the machine holds enough information and insights to understand if something is going to happen, if it's going to break, and fix the problem by itself. There's no need anymore for engineer to come and fix the problem. So IoT in industries and everywhere will be very important. It's smart cities, it's smart homes. Maybe in the future, well, I'm looking forward when my fridge will order the products that are no longer in the fridge, and then they will be delivered automatically, and the delivery guy or a robot, I don't know, will enter the house with a one-time key, put it in my fridge. So I think any devices will hold a lot of information, and devices will be communicating between each other. Or if we look at smart cities, maybe the cars will communicate to other cars and to road signs, and will automatically slow down when we see that when they understand there is traffic. So instead of suddenly a traffic jam, these cars will communicate and understand this and slow down automatically. So I'm definitely believing that there will be a huge change in IoT, interconnected devices holding a lot of information.
Okay, I think I support all what have been said so far. Just to add, I think AI is the base for many things. So even taking IoT and other sectors, AI is the base. So I definitely think that AI is our future. It's already being around for a while, but I think it's still a way to go to get to the level that we need it. And I see in some sectors it's being used more widely, in some sectors it's adapting more slowly, especially, for example, in education and government. Its adoption is slow, and I think that's very important that we as a businesses, as government on its side is pushing more and more for that part, because it's really important, so it's in every sector. So I see there are many differences, and there are many differences between adoption in different countries. So let's say China, they are adopting it much widely than in other countries, the same like in US, in Europe, so it's very different. So I think for at least next 10 to 15 years, we'll still have many differences, and we need to work to bring them to all sectors and bring them to all countries. Thanks.
Okay, just not to repeat the colleagues, I totally agree that it is AI, machine learning, but I will come to the question from another point of view. Why it is AI and machine learning? Because in case of other technologies, other new technologies, we have some regulatory issues and blockages. For example, if we talk about blockchain or we talk about big data, there is non-regulated areas, and there is regulatory issues. But in case of AI, there is no issue. I mean, to use AI in any sphere today is not prohibited. I mean, there is no restrictions. And to continue the topic of Veranika about the cars, just recently we see the new development where there is a machine-to-machine negotiations, and the car going from the behind is asking for the road, the car going forward, and they are starting to negotiate. And the car to give the road, just asking for some money, and they are paying by crypto. And it's already reality. And the next step, I think the car will decide how to spend this money, to change oil or to make other maintenance.
Just one
Thanks.
point,
Yeah.
because it's, my friend said that there's no regulations. For me, it's not about regulations more, but it's AI was around like even in 70s or 80s, but it's more like it's natural evolution. So for AI, we should have the technology in the right place, thanks to Amazon and other providers who bring it to the level that we can utilize and use AI. We needed big data first, because there are many problems which you need to first solve the problems with big data, then you can move to AI part where you need this big data. So I think it's naturally we were coming, and it's, yeah, maybe some regulations is playing a role there, but also we should have built whatever we built up to date in order to get to that level and start to apply AI more wider. So I think it was really important.
If I may ask just to turn off the mics so we don't have the noise once we finish speaking. So thanks for the inputs. Just we will come back to IoT topic, but talking about the AI, I would like to hear your thoughts on how you see the impact on technology or on specifically AI on humans, especially as employees. Today there are companies who are, there are many examples, but I will give you one example. There are companies who are developing software which is doing the analytics on the person behavior, the employee, and then do ranking of the employee, like how he's doing. Is he doing good? Is he working hard? Is the deliveries are on time? And then doing it systematically by reading emails, business emails, of course, with the contracts that employees have, that they can have access to the emails, or communication skills to other employees, and then giving ranking to the people. So how do you see this kind of interaction of technology and assessing people, basically? Do you see, is it good, is it bad, is it positive, or is it negative? So what are your thoughts here? And as we are getting more and more, you know that the technology is getting more into our daily life. So I would like you to speak up about the bad things, if there are any, in the technology. You see. Just jump in, anybody who want to take over. So it's open question to anybody.
Well, I've noticed that sometimes people are worried that, well, we have so much machine learning and AI going on, and like you mentioned, we are being assessed maybe by AI, and some people believe that the jobs will be taken. And I think that, well, probably, if we look, let's say 100%, so 10% of the jobs will probably be taken by, replaced by AI, machine learning tools. And as an example was in Amazon Go, and you see there is no cashiers anymore. So some jobs like this can be replaced, but it's only 10%. And the other 90%, the jobs will change, they will be adjusted, because a lot of things will be done by AI and by ML, but certainly a large part we'll simply, we will adjust the way we do business, the way we work, but I don't think that the rest of it will be replaced. I'm sure that our jobs will be simply changed. I hope so.
No, I think the impact will be, in my opinion, much more substantial than we think. And I think there will be huge replacement of jobs. And I think we are living today in the moment where we really don't know what jobs will stay, which jobs will go. Let's say 200 years, you would know precisely that, let's say, if your grandfather was a farmer, your father is a farmer, you are a farmer, so you are continuing this tradition. I don't think it's the case anymore, or the same for a doctor, the same for a legal advisor, because we see today that if we compete on intelligence, which is pretty much ability to solve problems, we cannot compete with AI. Because the way that AI can process information and give us, let's say, diagnosis, and tomorrow even make a surgery, or make a legal, be our legal defense, processing like simultaneously hundreds, thousands types of information is incomparable to our capacity to process that information. So I think the impact and the replacement of jobs will be huge. And the key question I think here is what really can be the our defense on that. Like on what side we can compete with the machines. And I don't think it's intelligence, I think it's consciousness. Because even though we don't know yet what is consciousness, but I think that's what we possess and machines don't. So I think the more we focus today on consciousness, and by the way, that trend is happening. For example, in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, there was a survey in US about how many people had the experience of meditation. And you know, it was less than 4%. Today, it's more than 14%. So I believe that's one of the, for example, tools or techniques that makes us more conscious, more mindful, and gives us more competitive edge in comparison to machines.
I also agree to that, and I think it's also natural processes of evolution. As you said, if you've been a farmer 300 years ago, it doesn't mean you will stay a farmer. It's about redistribution of the jobs and really how society shifts together with the evolution and with the innovation. Yes, there will be a certain % of people who will face it in a discomfortable way. However, the other, let's say the bigger mass would probably just adjust and reshuffle their skills and reshuffle their expertise to something else, be it related to what they used to do before or completely unrelated. It's just a natural shift that is basically constant with the evolution. It's always happening.
Any other thoughts or?
Yeah, I think it's more like, for me, it's more for positive side. So with each new technology and each new like transformation shift, this question is always raised, and also it brings some ways business are working, people are behaving, but it also brings with it new opportunities. So, and it's like for a business, you should be adaptive and you should be ready to constantly change how you behave, how you work. The same is here. I think it's technology comes, you should be adaptive. The same should be person. While you are learning and you are ready to be adaptive for the current situation, that you can change how you work, how you behave, how you start to think differently, you will be always in place and no one can replace you, and you can just benefit from each change. But if you just continue doing what we are doing for like 40 years and not flexible enough to be like change and to be adaptive, of course there will be one day that someone will do this job much better, or technology will do that job better. And for me, I think healthcare and again education, which needs this shift, because it's now mostly human controlled, and I see that if it will be technology controlled, we will have less errors there and we will be more successful in some areas.
Totally agree that this is a transformation period, and the workers and people who are ready to be transformed, they will win in this fight. Who are not ready, they will lose something. They will lose their jobs, they will lose their maybe future, etc. Just again to bring one example, just last year in Netherlands, in Eindhoven, there was first robot employment agency set up, and it's operating already 1 year, and companies and individuals can rent a robot, and these robots are very transformational. I mean, you can get 2 robots to split together and get one job done, one or 2 operations, and it's fully, let's say, you can control on own. You can set up the exact job that the robot can do. You can rent for 1 month, you can rent for 5 years. And their success is shown that this will grow. I mean, the number of such agencies will grow, and it's also already reality.
Thanks everyone. I think we, very interesting inputs, but I think we haven't touched the point of the security that as a consequences, let's say, of technology being implemented to everyday life, then you are more dependent, interconnected, and this black swan effect that can happen basically once there is certain issue, let's say, for some technology outflow on defense, let's say, industry or something. If you get more technology and more connected to each other, then the impact can be much bigger and not localized. So I think security is a big concern today and will be a big concern for the next decade for sure, as more technology being involved in our daily lives, same autonomous cars or connected cars, connected homes, etc. Then security is another big aspect to be taken care of carefully. But the other impact I see, and would like to hear your thoughts, is that with the development of technology, especially in the developed world where everything is already set up, the same manufacturing facilities, I think there is, with coming new technology, there is big opportunity, especially for emerging markets. Because in developed world, let's say, same big manufacturing companies, they have their processes, they are set up with huge investments, and with disruption of technology, the emerging markets can come over with new manufacturing. Let's say, I'm just giving example of manufacturing, but there are a lot of lines where they can benefit. So how you see this impact of the technology transformation to especially emerging markets and countries like Armenia? Please.
I think for emerging markets, we have some current landscape for emerging markets, and they mostly are the biggest countries like Brazil, Mexico, India. So, and why they were emerging markets? Because especially if I take like IT industry, so they were emerging because there were enough resources to scale quickly. Like if you need 10,000 people to establish some manufacturing or open an office, etc., it's very easy. So they were growing based on these resources and the scale opportunity. With AI, I think this landscape can dramatically change, and it is especially interesting for smaller countries and can provide more opportunity for smaller countries become emerging countries, because you don't need 10,000, 20,000 people to do great job in this area and this sector. You just need to have several hundred really good people, and they can do many things which you can't accomplish with other way to do it. So I think it's really good opportunity for Armenia especially to be there and to be like on the map for at least this area. And I think many companies and we as well were pushing for it for a long time already, and supportive and continue to support. And I see really good trend that the government also supports these ideas and these initiatives. So I think it's really good chance for countries like us to become and be positioned on the map as a like AI hub for this region, for bigger, like on a bigger scale.
Maybe a little bit unrelated specifically to manufacturing, but I think cloud and similar technologies and also software as a service, for instance, as a concept, gives equal opportunities to all the countries and all the markets, right? This is one of the huge benefits. Something that was before only available to the most developed countries, and even within the country only to the most developed companies and the richest company, today is equally available at the same ease of use to everyone. And I think this is a great opportunity for emerging countries really to leverage that and be able to consume exactly the same services and exactly the same software as all the other world at the fraction of the price, which is great.
I think in the longer run, for developing countries, the opportunities will be closely aligned with the rules how the networks are being managed. So let's say if we are saying about Internet of Things, that become a massive network of interconnected devices. So who governs that network? What rules are being set for developing countries, for example, to connect to those big networks? Because, you know, seeing today the distribution of wealth and seeing the influence of big companies, it's quite doubtful that they will give up all this power and make this distributed self-regulated networks. So I think it's in the long run that will be highly dependent on how all these big networks will be controlled and what rules will be set.
That maybe in the future the governments, the businesses and citizens should have more transparent communication, that they can discuss things like that. There will be probably a better relationship citizen and government, and as Ben mentioned, there are equal opportunities and we are interconnected, so this will be easier to probably discuss and bring this on top in an example of networks. And I'm very excited to see the emerging markets and things that are happening there. And I think there is a lot of, it's a great momentum right now, there is a lot of opportunities. And looking, for example, at the African market and what happened with mobile payments. Basically, they skipped the whole card thing and went to mobile payments. They pay with mobile. Now, even in Europe, not everywhere you can pay with using your mobile phone. And this is coming from there, from emerging markets. So we can take any country like this, or look at China, how advanced they are, or in India. So emerging markets, I like the idea of Ben, we all have equal opportunities right now with the internet, with being connected. You can share your ideas, you can collaborate with different communities, you can find related businesses, partnerships, and bring your idea to life much quicker than ever before. And also I see in this emerging markets that, well, we need to educate the children and at the universities, but the education level is very high, and there is great universities here and in the region. So I think we have a base also for mathematical universities, for AI and ML, because this is important when you build the algorithms. So I think the base is there, the internet and equal opportunities are there, so the momentum is definitely present.
Thanks. Let's touch another topic, which is privacy. You know that it is getting more and more hot topic in the world, and by digitizing our daily life, we have more and more data, basically, controlled by big companies like Google, like Facebook, like Amazon in this case. We have a representative and others as well. So by having more data, what are your thoughts here? You know that US have its own approach, Europe have its own approach, other countries are looking, some are going to the approach that US is taking, some are looking to copy and paste GDPR laws, and the other small countries, there are basically mostly no regulation at all so far, and governments have taken no role. So what are your thoughts here? How deep should be data usage regulated in the data sources that they have today? And then after these questions, I will have another question connected to this one. So let's first have this one. Who would like to take, please?
I would say it's also depends on humanity. Each technology that we are using, and especially data, we need to use with the responsibility. There are lots of talks that it should be regulated. In some countries it is already somehow done, in some countries no. But with the faster change of technologies, I don't believe that there can be fully regulated countries that will regulate all these new technologies. I mean, it's changed very fast, and there is no way to regulate them. And only the way is to use them with the highest responsibility. As soon as we lose this, let's say, feeling of responsibility, then it will go to, let's say, in dangerous way.
Is there any other things you would like to add?
Yeah, totally agree. And I think I would argue whenever privacy as a concept exists at all these days, right? The data is shared everywhere, and it's a huge asset. And without the data, many things wouldn't be possible today. The things that we see, and we call it an innovation. But as you said, I think what's critical is to define, let's say, the purpose and the boundary, how you use the data. Even the same thing what happened with US elections and the use of social networks to influence that. Exactly same thing could be done positively, right? You can influence people for the positive cause and not necessarily for an agenda of one particular person. It's just a question of how this is applied, and whenever the society and governments will figure out the way how to influence it in such a way that it would not stop the innovation, it would not prevent the usage of the data, but just make sure the data is used responsibly.
There are many concerns regarding security and privacy nowadays, and we recently hearing many lawsuits and many issues with that. But we need all to understand that since the day we started to use Facebook, Amazon Cloud Services, Gmail, since that day there is no privacy anymore, because you are sharing all your details, you are sharing all your business contacts. So you should acknowledge that everything now is wide open, and everything now is controlled by some companies, and they have this data. It's again, as my colleagues mentioned, we should acknowledge that, and we just need to put it in the right direction. We shouldn't be worried there is privacy issues, there is security issues, in the sense that it's not good, but we need to put it in the right way and put some rules. But the biggest problem is some countries trying to change it the way they can control it, not to do it for better, but to be able to have ways to control this data and use it as well. So I think it's very tricky situation. We need to understand and cooperate, businesses, government, and others, to make and find the right solution for it. Otherwise, yeah, it can be either very controlled or uncontrolled. So.
Just only to add that, for example, at AWS, customers retain full control and ownership of their data. So AWS does not access or have access to the customer data. And it's also very important what businesses do with this data. And I think we as consumers also need to have more visibility and more transparency of what happens to our data. And again, we should have some kind of an open dialogue. And like any applications or businesses, they should have an options for us to opt out of sharing our data if we don't want this. So we need to have as consumers control over what happens to our data. And also, I like the concept of data for good, because sometimes if we look at the medical field and AI, ML applications there, for example, they collect a lot of information on a certain disease, and they can help cure this disease based on a pattern that the algorithm found. So also for these people, there should be an option that they can say, okay, I want you to use my data, or please, here's my data, use it to cure the disease for the future. So there should be maybe two trajectories. One, we need to have control of the data, and we need to say also to have the concept of data for good, for this type of cases when we want to share our data to help others in the future, for example, cure disease or anything like that.
Thanks. Thank you. My own view, I think there should be some regulation. At the same time, not to regulate to the point that there is no innovation happening, all the data is closed. But certainly there should be some regulation, so companies will not use it the way they want, and for good and for bad as well. So the other point I would like to raise is especially with same using technologies in development of the city's daily life, smart city solutions that we have, face recognition on cameras. We know more and more cities now developing these solutions or buying these solutions, and having basically in some cases total control of the people, cars they can find and go back, where you have been, what time of the day, in which location. Do you think that of course it's helping a lot on to reduce the traffic jams or to control the street lights, a lot of benefits that we are getting out of it, but at the same time we are basically losing, we as people living in the city, our private life to the city, let's call it this way, and you never know if some hacker will hack this information and you will have this information out one day. So do you see concern here, or do you positively looking to all of these changes that technology brings to our daily life?
I think as our life becomes more and more digital, there is an inevitable element that we lose, privacy, and I think we have to accept that. That's the also power of the digital. And as we discussed with the previous question, it's really important how the data is being governed, what transparency we have to that data, but I think that's normal. I mean, today, if you have an Apple device, Apple knows pretty much everything about your location, about your usage. I'm using Amazon, for example. I'm a Prime account member from, let's say, 2012. And recently, when I was looking at the history of all the orders, Amazon has a pretty good picture of who am I, how big my family is. And, you know, like that's, and I think that's normal. You know, like I think we have to accept that giving into digital is inevitable to lose that privacy. The key is how that privacy is being used and how we are secured and defended for the privacy.
Just one small correction here. In case of Amazon, this is a service that you are using and you are accepting that you are using with the terms and condition. In case of the city, you are just walking in the city, basically. You're not using the service, it's your daily life. This is a bit different. That's why my question was more about how do you see on using the data on something that you haven't basically opted in even, or you have no choice to opt out.
Yeah, also agree here. So I think key here is transparency and ability to opt in and opt out, right? When we talk about particular services, you expect that your data will be there.
Absolutely.
And you can even understand how it will be used in certain cases. When you just do your regular life and you just walk on the street and the data is being collected, that's not necessarily the best thing, right? Because it's not something you can control. It's, you don't know upfront how this data will be used. Is it going to harm you or the other way around? So I don't necessarily see it as the best thing. Yes, it does have a good purpose sometimes, right? It's also about security and things like that. But in this particular case, I think the trade-off is a bit too large, and there might be other ways how security could be ensured without breaking, let's say, that intrusively into your life.
Thanks. Thanks. Is there any other views, or we all agree on this?
Just the question is, by whom are used this data and who are collecting? I mean, if it is private, then it is not acceptable and you should, let's say, not accept. But if it's government, and if you trust your government and you know that they will use this in a right way, then you should accept and continue to live. If you are going to another country as a tourist, I think you, before visiting, you need to check is there anything that could be, let's say, collected or destroyed.
Exactly. You may trust your government, but also trust, probably it's not a binary thing. You can have a certain trust, but do you trust that much that you are ready to share all your life events with your government? But also when you travel, right, you may not be even protected by anyone when you, I mean, by any law. Your country can't protect you anymore when you just travel to China, for instance, and on every crosswalk on the crossroad, you are filmed, right? So I think it's a bit slippery area here, specifically with that example.
Good. So China's government can say it's for good because they are using it to find criminals. And I saw that they are really successful in using AI and image recognition in finding people much efficiently than the police can do it. So it's again, I mean, we are saying data should be used for good, they are using it for good. But then we say we don't want our data, or we don't want to be screened. So it's very like, we need to understand which one is more better for us and forward that way.
I agree. I think there is different approaches, and definitely there will be different cases from government to government on how they are using. Of course, everybody will say that we are using it for good. I don't think there will be anybody who will come out and will tell that they are using to catch people who are doing protests or something, but the technology can help there as well. So it's about, I think, as we very correctly mentioned, it's about us to choose whether we are fine with being screened and then have take away our privacy and then sit one day and wait for a surprise, or we can fight against that. So privacy is a big topic, security is a big topic, and also by today's bit disconnected world, we see more and more cases of companies capturing a lot of markets and becoming huge companies, and let's say eating small ones, yeah, by using good techniques and technologies, helping to bring huge companies from the ground. And how do you see the approach that different countries are taking in anti-competition, antitrust laws? Especially US, we know, is more open on anti-competition, and they just open the market so companies can compete with each other. They don't influence too much by government on the way companies are operating, while Europe is a bit different, and we have China, which is totally different, closing the market for its own internal companies in some cases. So what do you see the differences, and which one you think is better approach in general?
Well, so I spoke a bit about ecosystems before, and it's all about openness, right? I do believe that the key for success is a fair and open competition, and opening as much as possible, obviously with equal rights and equal opportunities. Because, yeah, closing as such, this word itself is already have a negative connotation. Open have a better connotation. It's about collaboration, it's about equal opportunities, it's about really, let's say, fulfilling your mission, right? Putting your effort into make it, because there is a competition.
You don't see positive signs for China itself as a country, where they closed the ecosystem and then they had many companies like Alibaba and others growing up. I'm not saying in general for the world, but I'm saying as a country itself. Yeah, they closed Google services and others. Now we see a lot of companies in China which were not existing before, now growing and now going to take over to other countries. So do you see this is a good approach from their perspective, or you see that it was not clever one?
I don't necessarily believe that they will be able to take over the world with that approach, right? And even to expand. I think what happened is that because it's a huge country, they opened up a lot of opportunities internally to kind of replicate and imitate what was done elsewhere and leverage that internally. But that's pretty much it, right? They can continue doing that, but can they actually bring that service outside? I'm not sure about that. Could happen, right? But I'm not really sure about that. We haven't seen, apart from Huawei, we haven't seen any actual example of how such a large-scale developments of China went outside. Alibaba is popular in China. WeChat is very popular in China. Is it popular outside? Not to that scale.
Do everybody agree on this?
No. Look to please. I think China is an exception because in their case, having that size of a population, it was actually quite smart to make it closed and rapidly improve. And we see that today technology in terms of artificial intelligence, big data analysis, it's actually very advanced in China. And the same ecosystem approach that Alibaba took to the next level, I think it's a huge accomplishment for that country. And now with all the capital and the expertise that they gained, I believe they can actually have a quite serious impact also on a global scale. So I believe in their case, that was actually a smart strategy. I don't think, let's say, Armenia has that leverage because we just don't have that mass where we can teach and, make it closed and, establish our own technology from ground up, which is highly dependent on the number of users. They had that opportunity. Other small countries, I don't think they have, and that's why they have to join some other networks where they can build that expertise.
I agree with Ben. I also saw many examples that companies being successful in China are trying to go and to be world domination, get world domination, but they are not successful, and even spending a lot of money. Good examples are Alibaba. They are trying really hard, especially with cloud services. They are trying really hard to compete with Amazon, with Google, with Microsoft, but still they have very small market share. But I know they are spending a lot of efforts and a lot of money together, but they can't replicate the success they had in China. China's phenomenon, I think it's, as mentioned, their market is big enough, so all the companies there can be kind of self-sustainable, and they have like closed for everyone. So all the companies there have some split of industry, split of markets. That's why they are successful. But the way they do their business, I think it's not a scalable model, and you can replicate it worldwide. But what's worrying that many countries now trying to go the way China was doing, like Russia recently trying to close the internet, control it the same way like China doing, and many other countries are now discussing, thinking. So I think that's will change a lot if the countries will become close, and it will be totally different world, because when internet was created, it was all about there are no borders, everything is open, you can share everything within any countries, and now we are going to other direction, to Chinese direction. So I think we need to think, is it good, or it will change the world and how we behave in long term.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there are specific examples in China which did really successful, and one of them is Huawei, which is now global player and #1 player what comes to today on the especially mobile infrastructure business. They outbid Nokia, they outbid Ericsson on revenues, etc. And this is just one example. I think we will have more examples. So China, I agree that it is a bit different story, and you would never say if this model will work, as you mentioned, in Russia, which is trying to do similar moves, or I'm not speaking even to smaller countries. Definitely, it is not applicable case. So, what from your point of view should be the focus on the future of developing the technologies for? Specifically, we are here in Armenia. What do you think Armenia should take a look on the technology development to play a role in this global ecosystem? Or countries like Armenia size that are developing and have some visions and historical background on technology advancement. So I would like to hear your thoughts, what the countries like Armenia should focus on.
Looking at startups that you have in Armenia, and there are more and more coming up, and some of them that work with AWS, what I've noticed that they do not necessarily focus on the local market. In fact, because of the size of the market, they all have a global vision. So it doesn't matter what technology they're using, are they AI or not, or anything else, but they all have a global perspective. So probably they start with their pilot projects as a local market, and they want to test their idea and see how it works, and then they'll go global. But I'm excited to see this mindset that this local market is not enough. They are all having a vision of being a global company and serving customers around the world, and they build this architecture from scratch to be able to scale to the world when the time comes, when they are ready, despite the technology. So that doesn't matter what they do exactly. Yeah.
I think I agree that there is no boundaries and we should not concentrate just inside Armenia. And a good example is PicsArt. I think Mikayel will continue that they start from the small company and now they are well known worldwide. And the point, it's not in the technology. It could be combination of different technology. I will say it importance in the product, but not in the technology. Maybe there will not be new technology born, but with the construction of different technologies could be very interesting and good product. For example, as PicsArt. And there are many companies in Armenia that's well known worldwide. Even we don't know about them in Armenia because we are not using, our users are not known. But
it was well noted by Veranika that Armenians are always thinking globally. And I look, it's like positive, from positive side. So no matter that we don't have 1.5 billion people, but our advantage that since the first day we are not thinking too narrow and not within one country scope, but we think globally. And I think it's really a big advantage for us. And there is no other option, let's say this way, because our market is too small to play in it, and if there are several players, it's already crowded, and you can do and you can grow. So you need to think from the first day, and that's why you always adaptive, you're always prepared to change your direction, because you are playing in the world with big players. So I think it's helped us a lot, and that was one of the key things that helped us to grow. If just we take on our example, because since the first day we knew that we should play with big players, and we were thinking about that, and we were not worrying that we can do something from Armenia. We were sure that if we do it right, we can do it. So I think it's really big advantage compared to, let's say, China. Of course, they have their own advantage, but we should be realistic, and that's where we are, and we have no other option. So I think it really helps and will help many companies to succeed, because to start that way, with that mindset.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think taking into account our size, we have a great chance to specialize in different technologies, being quick in adopting them, in validating them. And like if this is machine learning or AI, why not to be the first city that, let's say, governed by AI or electric cars only, or let's say Internet of Things? I mean, we can build those protocols, we can connect to that network, and taking into account our size, we can quickly leverage on that. The key will be how the partnership works, how open we are to collaborate with each other inside Armenia to accelerate that. But I believe, yeah, I mean, if we can connect as a network of partners, have set a clear vision on where we want to specialize, I think technology-wise, knowledge-wise, everything is accessible today.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. I think I agree with the point raised, is the important one. I think we should give the message to the Armenian companies is definitely to think big, to dream big, and then the rest is matter of how they execute. So by this, I would like to pass to our audience if there is any questions you would like to address to our panelists. Please raise your hands and we'll be happy to pass this. Is there any questions you have? Please.
I have one question about decision making in AI. So we always saying that we need AI, but how about making a final decision? Like AI should make the decision, or it should suggest some decisions, and we should take one of them. Thank you.
What should we address the decision making to computers, or we should be putting filter? Of course, it's a bit wide question, but
I think, let's say, if we take an analogy with driverless cars, so if this will become a network of cars that are now interconnected and are governed by some master algorithm, then for the security and safety of that network, it has to take the decision. And then that raises the ethical and philosophical question, how we set those rules. Because in case it becomes one network, then let's say if there is a accident that will happen, and the AI with the deep intelligence that is unmatched for us can calculate that it will happen, let's say, in 5 minutes, and here 5 people can die, and here 3 people can die, or the person who is sitting in this car can die, bringing less, let's say, loss, then how we set those rules? And I think, yes, the algorithm should decide, because they have much better decision-making insights and capacity than we, but we have to set the right rules so that that system can work.
Yeah, in addition to that, teaching the machine is iterative process. So while we are teaching the machine, obviously we need to guide the machine, and we need to give advices what's right and what's wrong. And as we go with multiple iterations forward, we can trust machine better, and at a certain point we can completely leave it up to the machine to make a decision, right? It's all about how many patterns machine can recognize, and in the beginning obviously it will be pretty small number of patterns, and as it progresses the number will increase.
Maybe it sounds a little bit philosophical, but what do you think? Are we going to be more happier in future, or this is a comfort that AI and all these things and all these technology developments are going to make us more creative, etc.? Is it a comfort just to think about it, or you think that is a real thing? That well.
You know, I think we as humans, the sooner we understand that the happiness is inside of us and has nothing to do with anything external, be that digital or non-digital, the better for us. So I believe that, you know, happiness we have to find inside ourselves rather than in external devices or networks or services.
on the other hand, what we can observe, probably many of us, is that technology and a lot of consumer, let's say, consumer-driven behavioral creates a false perception that this is happiness, and it makes it for people to realize that happiness is actually inside us, right? So it's also very philosophical, but I do believe that that's the case.
Maybe there will be robots who will make us happier.
Yes, okay. In 10 years you will be happy, what do you think? So you say that it's all about your personality. So if you are happy, you will try to be always happy, and technology, I don't think technology will impact your happiness.
I think this is a very interesting question. It's a lot of debate around this, because actually they say that social media, there are more depressed people now than there were in the past. So something is happening, and they say that social media leads to this depression also, because we see our friends having this awesome life on the Instagram and everything is great, and you don't have this. So it's a very good question, and I'm not sure. I hope that we find happiness within us, but statistics shows that we are now more depressed than ever. You know, antidepressant pills are the top seller right now after the cardiac diseases. So. Yes. Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now there is a lot of limits on the applications, iPhones usage. Companies are more and more paying attention to it. But there is also, I mean, without that, we shouldn't have this connected life. We couldn't make communication with our relatives who were living outside of our countries, far away. So there is always pluses coming with minuses, so it depends on what kind of view you are taking to this topic. But yeah, absolutely big discussion. I don't think we can stay here till night, I think, if we will go deeper into this question. Any other questions? Please. Please, Alex, you go and then, or, okay.
I have a question about business approaches. So if I'm not mistaken, big companies, even Amazon, if I'm not mistaken, told that they're going out from the approach of customer-centric or margin-centric. They're going to focus on human-centric. That approach means that they definitely need to identify the necessity of the people, of the human, and to implement the best solution. But it stands me in a conflict. Just because I'm like a businessman, I would like to sell more and with a higher price. And as a consumer, I would like to spend less money and to get best value. What do you think? What is the best way where we can find the balance?
Which side you are? On the business side or consumer side? So
I can be on the business side and I can be on the consumer in one time.
I mean, yeah, if you're doing business, of course, you need first to think about user, customer, which in its turn will get you these margins, revenue, and the rest. So I think that's what the right way to go in any case, but you can't forget about let's revenue or like growing your business and say, okay, I'm doing only for user, even if it's the expense of my business. At some point, I think you need to find the right balance, but and do more for user, because from my experience, from our company's experience, I see that if you focus on user more, then it is much easier to get and the revenue and margins in if user really happy and you build the product for the user. In short term, you can have a bit like loss, but in long term you will win for sure. And I think all the companies which are in the market, they did it that way initially. They grow even at the expense of their business, and they're burning some money, but in long term they won, because they made the user stickier and they make the product the users like to use.
Okay, thank you.
I will also add, as I spoke in the beginning, about how important customers are. So I think no matter what, you always have to focus on the customers. And also for businesses, they will find new opportunities and ways to generate this revenue as long as they focus on the customer and they find the ways to enhance the experience. And this is how new businesses can compete with old businesses who've been there for years. But this is how this startups come up and thrive. They see something, some pains of the customer, some slow processes, not working processes, and they reinvent it. And this is how they generate their growth. And maybe in the beginning they are not so profitable, but just focusing on the customer, enhancing this experience will get them this growth in the future. So I truly believe that the way to go is to focus on the customer.
Just to add to that, but you know, like this no focus on the customer or losing the focus on the customer is exactly what brings disruption and disrupt big companies, because they start seeing the customers as the, you know, user base that won't change, that preference won't change, and that's exactly what brings disruption and ability to disrupt for smaller companies who are more agile in terms of understanding the changing customer needs that big companies not yet notice, and then start building and adapting their product to those changing customer needs. And they eventually become big company and forgetting about that. But that's a different story. Yes, definitely focusing on the customer side first.
Yeah. So I think you know, building the models, the AI models, is getting easier and easier as you have more tech companies now, like, for example, data, robot, auto, machine learning, features that are coming out. But the hard part for a lot of the companies is, I guess, operationalization or sort of embedding AI into their processes. What are some of the best practices you guys have seen in companies that have really embedded AI into their, across the, you know, across a bank or across a hospital, right? What are some of the things they do to actually make it part of their process versus just building one-off models, essentially?
The question could not hear very well. It's about how we embed the AI, companies embed the AI in their internal processes.
Yeah, exactly. And how can they make it a part so that it's not just in one part of the bank or one part of the hospital, but it's across the whole organization?
You wanna speak?
Yeah, just quickly. I do think that the idea itself of embedding AI or any other technologies across the board might not be necessarily the best idea, because it's about first figuring out where it can solve your biggest problem or how it can add most of the value, and only attack that particular area, and then see if you can also use it elsewhere. Because embedding or implementing AI shouldn't be a goal by itself. You should start with the problem that you are trying to solve with that, and that way you make it lean as well for you.
Point, and we see many examples that companies just saying we are doing AI or embedding AI, just having a goal to have this trendy word in their companies. But eventually I think you should come from the problem, and the AI is just one of the tools, one of the approach to solve that problem. So if you will come from problem side, you will make right decision whether to use AI or to use any other tool, and you will use AI the way that it's really right. Because otherwise, having on itself the goal to just embed AI is very hard. You won't understand what to do with it, and eventually you will not get the results you will need from it. So coming from the problem and then deciding whether AI makes sense and whether you have enough data, whether you have enough capacity, enough people to solve it with AI, it works the best.
The example of Amazon.com, the retailer, so how they use AI beneath the surface. It's, for example, the processes like forecasting the demand. The AI plays a crucial role, or recommending the products or deals to the customer also, or fraud detection, or translating the pages. So all of it is actually based on AI, ML, and it's beneath the surface. And this is really helps, it has a very meaningful impact on our cooperations.
Also, especially in the service industry, companies now are more using not only on their core services, the AI on their core application, but especially like on customer call center, let's say. So how you, being a big company, can give a personal touch to your customer. Let's say when the customer is calling to your call center, how you adapt your call center so the same person tries to answer to the same customer who is calling all the time, if you have the chance, or to loop this and provide experience to the user that like it's a small company that he is calling, it's like making friendship. So this is how you can implement technology, AI, ML, or different technologies in different parts of the organization to make better, not only in general the main service you are doing, but especially to different parts of the organization. Then bringing a lot of benefit overall and making you more competitive to others. So I think more and more you use the technology, and today it's more and more tools are available. So we have more tools in development as well, that people were doing development even of the applications totally differently now than they were doing 10 years, 5 years before. So I think it's very important to use the technology in different places of the organization. Any other questions? Seems we are done with questions, so let's applause. And oh yeah, please, Grigor.
I just, sorry for rolling back, just would like to answer to the question of happiness. Maybe to close.
Okay. On happy note.
Because the, let's say, answer is more in philosophy. I mean, to be happy, there are 4 preconditions. First is that you are becoming happy when you are solving the issues for somebody, helping somebody to solve any issue, small or big. The second precondition is that you are not alone and you are in some communities. The third one is about healthiness, and the fourth one is about possibility to learn, always. And if we see all these 4 new technologies are only supporting these 4 topics and not blocking.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to our panelists. Let's applause for a great panel. See you next time.